Hello, my name is Aliza Hammond, and today I have the privilege of sharing with you the story of Bill Orlin, an amazing man that I've gotten the privilege to know over the past few months, a Holocaust survivor that is greatly inspiring and an amazing guy by all measures. So, Bill's story is entitled Against All Odds, and hopefully throughout the presentation you'll come to see why. Bill originates from a town in Poland called Brock. When Bill was growing up there, the total population was 3,000 and the Jewish population was 1,000. So Jews composed approximately one-third of the population at the time. And this is an important number to keep your eye on, the Jewish population being 1,000. Brock was invaded on September 8th, 1939 by the Nazis, and Bill was 7 years old at the time. Bill's family was forced to walk all day to another place in Poland called Ostrow Mazowiecki. This is where they remained for 90 days until the end of October. On this walk was one of Bill's first memories from this journey. When his family was approached by a group of Nazis, soldiers, um, the soldier actually cut his grandfather's beard off. And his grandfather replied by saying, "I'm a man of God, we are God's people." And in German, the soldier responded, "God is with us." And those are the first German words that Bill ever learned. This is a very vivid memory that still stays with Bill today. And he says that if his grandfather had shown that level of aggression towards a soldier at any later point in the war, he would have been killed on the spot. But because it was kind of early on, he got lucky and he was able to keep walking and stay with his family. Bill's family was then put on a train, separated from their grandparents, and he went to Belarusia, where he stayed in the part that is highlighted in blue called Minsk Oblast. In Belarusia, in Minsk, he stayed with a Jewish family. And then he went to Babruisk, where his father found a job in manufactory. His brother Felix was born. They were ultimately reunited with their grandmother. And it was then that Bill and his family were informed that their grandfather had frozen to death while they were separated. Bill started school here at 8 years old, only speaking Yiddish at a music academy, and they lived here until 1941. However, then this was now invaded by the Nazis and they had to relocate. Bill's family went to Russia proper, where his father was drafted into the Russian army. They lived on a community farm. His mother worked in the field where he attended second grade at the school on the farm. And the Germans advanced rapidly, so ultimately they had to leave and flee again. There, he went to Uzbekistan with his family. He learned how to speak Uzbek. Unfortunately, this is where his grandmother's life ended in 1942. His father was ultimately released from the army in 1943 and met up with his family in Uzbekistan, and his father was released due to illness. And then eventually the Germans were chased out of Russia and Poland. Then, after the war, they spent 10 months on a community farm in Ukraine. Or this is still during the war, but just on the back end of it, 10 months in a community farm in Ukraine. And Bill was the only Jewish student they've ever had there. Bill's family suffered from severe hunger and malnutrition, and Bill recalls having to steal from the market in order to sustain him and his family's lives and well-being. It was here that his brother Jaime was born. Lastly, was located back to Poland at the end of the war, and he recalls extreme anti-Semitism, which is a part of post-Holocaust Europe that is often overlooked. And him and his father and his brothers had major trouble finding a job. They lived in a displaced persons camp in Germany, where he learned to speak English and Hebrew, and this is a picture of his family after the war. After a few years, Bill's family learned they did not make it into the US Polish quota, so they ultimately decided to immigrate to Canada. It was here that Bill attended Baron Byng High School, and they eventually moved to Houston, Texas. One fascinating thing that I didn't know about many Holocaust survivors was that they didn't discuss their experience early on with their family and their new friends in the States and in Canada. It was really once Holocaust museums and memorials started to go up decades later that the Holocaust was talked about. That was something that was fascinating to me. When Bill was living in Houston, he got a letter from President Eisenhower saying that he had to register for the draft, and it was then he was sent back to Europe. He was stationed in Germany. And one of Bill's quotes is, "At 7 years old, I was occupied by the Germans. At 20 years old, I was occupying the Germans." So it's quite fascinating to hear about. All four of Bill's brothers, including Bill, served in the U.S. Army, which is a great source of pride for Bill and his family. And Bill nowadays was very successful in his business and enjoys now talking to students and groups of young individuals who are interested in hearing about his story. And one specific experience that Bill remembers when talking to students is one student stood up and said, "Mr. Orlin, with all that you went through, did it ever bother you that you were Jewish? Did you ever want to change your religion?" And to that, without hesitation, he responded, "Never." Bill is a very proud Jew and embraces his past and uses that to carry him forward. So going back to the title of this presentation, Against All Odds, again, I told you to pay attention to the Jewish population of the town being 1,000. According to Yad Vashem, of those 1,000 people that lived in Brock, Poland at the start of the war, 35 survived. And against all odds, 6 of those 35 were Bill and his entire family. You don't hear stories like this often. And when you ask Bill what he did or how his family was so fortunate to have all come out of the Holocaust, he says they were at the right place at the right time. They got on the right train, they moved to the right place, lived on the right farm. And it's really, really inspiring. Bill says it was luck. So this is Against All Odds, a story of Bill Orlin. I hope you enjoyed hearing Bill's story as much as I enjoyed meeting him and hearing his inspiring story. Thank you.